I still remember the day my husband told me our newborn baby had died. I cried until I couldn't breathe, believing I had lost the greatest gift God had ever given me. For 20 years, I carried that pain in silence, never imagining that the biggest tragedy of my life wasn't my baby's death. It was my husband's lie. 20 years later, that lie came back to change all our lives forever. Before we continue, if you enjoy emotional stories filled with unforgettable twists, please like this video, subscribe to True Life Voices, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another story. Now, let's begin. My name is Sarah. When I met David, I thought I had found the perfect man. He was charming, hardworking, and always knew exactly what to say. We were married after just 18 months of dating. We didn't have much money, but we had dreams, and I believed love would be enough. When I became pregnant, David seemed excited. He painted the baby's room himself and spent evenings talking to my growing belly. "I can't wait to meet our little boy," he would say with a smile. I believed every word. As my due date approached, David started acting strangely. He often disappeared for hours without explaining where he had been. Whenever I asked, he would smile and say he was working extra shifts so we could provide a better future for our son. I wanted to believe him. The night I went into labor, a heavy rainstorm flooded the streets. David rushed me to the hospital, gripping my hand the entire way. Everything happened so fast. Doctors wheeled me into the delivery room. After hours of unbearable pain, I finally heard the sweetest sound in the world, my baby's first cry. Tears filled my eyes. "Can I hold him?" I whispered weakly. A nurse smiled. "Just for a few minutes. We need to clean him first." I watched as she carried him away. That was the last time I saw my son. A few minutes later, everything became blurry. The doctor explained that I had lost a lot of blood and needed emergency treatment. The room faded into darkness. When I woke up the next morning, David was sitting beside my bed. His eyes were red. His hands trembled. I immediately looked around the room. "Where's our baby?" David lowered his head. "I'm so sorry." I felt my heart stop. What happened? He didn't make it. The words echoed through my mind. Didn't make it. Didn't make it. And I screamed until nurses rushed into the room. I begged them to let me see him one last time. But David held me tightly. "They've already taken him away." I buried my face in the pillow and cried until I had no tears left. The funeral was held 2 days later. David told me the hospital advised against seeing the baby's body because it would make my grief worse. I believed him. Looking back now, that was the biggest mistake of my life. Weeks turned into months. Months became years. Life moved on, but I never truly healed. Every year on the date my son was supposedly born, I baked a tiny birthday cake and lit a single candle. David hated it. "Sarah," he would sigh, "you need to let him go." But a mother's heart never lets go. One afternoon, while cleaning David's old office, I discovered a small locked box. When I asked about it, he snatched it from my hands. "It's just old paperwork." His reaction unsettled me. For the first time in our marriage, I wondered if my husband was hiding something. Years passed. Eventually, our marriage fell apart. David became distant, cold, secretive. We divorced after 15 years together. He remarried 6 months later. I never did. Instead, I poured my heart into opening a small neighborhood bakery. The bakery became my second home. The smell of fresh bread filled the emptiness inside me. Customers became friends. Life wasn't perfect, but it was peaceful. Then, on a rainy Tuesday morning, the doorbell above my bakery rang. A young man walked inside. He looked about 20 years old. Tall, polite, kind eyes. There was something strangely familiar about him. As I handed him a loaf of bread, he reached into his pocket to pay. That's when I saw it. Around his wrist hung a tiny blue woven bracelet. The exact bracelet I had knitted for my newborn son the night before he was born. My hands froze. The bread slipped from my fingers. The young man looked at me with concern. "Ma'am, are you okay?" My voice shook. Where did you get that bracelet?" He smiled. "I've had it since I was a baby." My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear anything else. The young man looked at me with concern. "Ma'am, are you okay?" I couldn't take my eyes off the bracelet. My hands trembled as I reached toward it. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "It's just that bracelet looks exactly like one I made for my baby 20 years ago." He looked down at his wrist and smiled. "My parents told me I've worn it since the day they adopted me. I've never taken it off." The word adopted hit me like lightning. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I forced a smile and handed him his change. "What's your name?"
Ethan.
A beautiful name. The same name David, and I had chosen if our baby was a boy. My heart pounded. "Who adopted you?" He hesitated for a second. "My parents, Michael and Rebecca Thompson." Are they good people?" His face lit up. "They're the best parents anyone could ask for. They always told me I was chosen, not abandoned." Tears filled my eyes. If he truly was my son, at least he had been loved. Before leaving, Ethan turned back. "You make the best bread I've ever tasted." I managed a weak smile. "Thank you." The door closed behind him. I stood frozen. Then I burst into tears. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bracelet, his age, his name, his smile. Everything pointed to one impossible truth. The next morning, I drove straight to the hospital where I had given birth 20 years earlier. The building had been renovated, but the records department was still there. A receptionist greeted me politely. "I'm looking for my maternity records from 20 years ago." She frowned. "Records that old are archived. I don't care how long it takes." "It's important." Hours passed. Finally, an elderly records officer returned carrying a dusty file. "Mrs. Sarah Williams?" "Yes." He placed the folder on the desk. As I opened it, my hands shook uncontrollably. Inside were copies of my medical reports. Then, one page was missing. The page containing my baby's death certificate. "There should be another document," I said. The officer adjusted his glasses. He searched the folder again. "There isn't one." My heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" He looked confused. "If a baby dies in the hospital, there should always be a death certificate. There isn't one in your file." A cold chill ran down my spine. "So, you're saying—" He slowly nodded. "According to our records, your baby was discharged alive." Everything around me seemed to stop. My legs gave way. I collapsed into the chair. For 20 years, I had mourned a child who had never died. I left the hospital in complete shock. Only one person knew the truth. David. I drove straight to his house. He answered the door wearing expensive clothes and an annoyed expression. "What are you doing here?" I held up the hospital records. "Our son didn't die." His face turned pale. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he whispered, "Come inside." The moment the door closed, I looked him straight in the eyes. "Where is my son?" David buried his face in his hands. "I never wanted you to find out. Answer me." His voice cracked. I owed dangerous people a lot of money. I had lost everything gambling. They threatened to kill me. My stomach turned. "So what did you do?" He couldn't even look at me. "I met a wealthy couple who desperately wanted a baby. They offered enough money to clear my debts." The room began spinning. You sold our baby?" He broke down crying. "I told myself he'd have a better life. I convinced myself I was saving all of us. You were unconscious after giving birth. The doctors thought I was signing discharge papers. I signed adoption papers instead." Every word felt like a knife piercing my heart. For 20 years, he had watched me cry. He had watched me light birthday candles. He had comforted me, while knowing our son was alive. I slapped him across the face. The sound echoed through the room. "You stole 20 years from me. I'll never forgive you." As I turned to leave, David said quietly, "I don't think Ethan knows." I stopped. "What do you mean?" "He believes Michael and Rebecca are his biological parents. If you tell him the truth, you could destroy the only family he's ever known." His words followed me all the way home. For the first time, I didn't know what the right thing to do was. Should I tell Ethan the truth, or keep the secret forever? The next morning, as I unlocked my bakery, the bell above the door rang. It was Ethan. He smiled warmly. I don't know why, but ever since yesterday, I feel like I've known you my whole life. I felt tears gathering in my eyes. Then he reached into his backpack. I actually came to ask you something. He placed an old photograph on the counter.
It was a picture of me.
Holding my newborn son. In the hospital. My heart stopped. Do you know who this woman is? Stared at the photograph, lying on the bakery counter. It was me, 20 years younger, exhausted after childbirth, smiling weakly as I cradled my newborn son. My hands began to shake. I slowly looked up at Ethan. Where did you get this?
He sighed.
My dad gave it to me yesterday. You mean Michael? He nodded. He told me he found it years ago among my adoption papers. My heart skipped a beat. Adoption papers? Ethan nodded again. I always knew I was adopted. My parents never lied to me. They told me they brought me home when I was only a few days old. I closed my eyes for a moment. Michael and Rebecca hadn't lied to him. David had. Ethan continued. My dad has been sick recently. He said if anything ever happened to him, I deserve to know everything. I swallowed hard. What exactly did he tell you? He told me they adopted me from a private arrangement. He never knew much about my birth mother. He only knew she was unconscious after giving birth. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I couldn't hold them back anymore. Ethan. He looked at me with concern. Are you all right? I reached into my handbag. Inside was an old photograph I had carried for 20 years. It showed the tiny blue bracelet tied around my newborn baby's wrist. I placed it beside the photograph he had brought. They matched perfectly. Every thread, every knot, every tiny stitch. Ethan stared at both pictures, then slowly looked down at the bracelet on his own wrist. His smile faded. What does this mean? My voice trembled. It means I made that bracelet the night before my son was born. Silence filled the bakery. He looked confused, then frightened, then overwhelmed. No. He whispered. No. I nodded through my tears. My husband told me you died. I believed him. For 20 years. I thought I had buried my little boy. Ethan stepped backward. His breathing became heavier. You're saying? I nodded. I'm your mother. The room fell silent. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. Finally, Ethan asked the question I had feared the most. If you're my mother, why didn't you come for me? The words shattered my heart. I tried. I begged to see you after you were born. But your father told me you had died. I never stopped loving you. Not for one single day. He searched my face, looking for the truth, looking for the years we had lost. Tears filled his eyes. Then, without saying another word, he walked out of the bakery. The bell above the door echoed through the empty room. I collapsed into a chair. For 20 years, I had dreamed of finding my son. I never imagined I might lose him again. 3 days passed. No phone call. No message. No visit. Every time the bakery door opened, my heart raced. But it was never Ethan. On the 4th morning, a black SUV stopped outside. An older couple stepped out. Michael and Rebecca. I immediately recognized them from the family photo Ethan had shown me. Rebecca walked toward me first. Before I could say anything, she wrapped her arms around me. I'm so sorry, she whispered. We never knew. Fresh tears filled my eyes. Michael removed his glasses. When David came to us, he said his wife had died during childbirth. He told us there were no relatives. We believed him. We thought we were giving a child a loving home. I nodded slowly. I know. I don't blame either of you. You gave my son the love I couldn't. Michael's voice shook. Ethan knows everything now. I looked toward the door. Where is he? Before Michael could answer, the bakery bell rang. I turned around. There he was, Ethan, standing quietly, holding the little birthday cake I had baked every year for him. He smiled through tears. I found 20 candles in your cupboard. You really celebrated my birthday every year, even when you thought I was gone. I couldn't speak. He walked toward me. Every step erased years of pain. I was angry. I was confused. But then I realized something. You didn't abandon me. You were robbed of me. I broke down crying. So, he smiled. Would it be okay if I called you Mom? I covered my mouth, unable to stop sobbing. After 20 years, the word I thought I'd never hear finally found its way home. I hugged him tighter than I had ever hugged anyone. Neither of us wanted to let go. Months later, our families began spending time together. Michael and Rebecca remained Ethan's parents, and I became part of the family they had lovingly built. There was no competition, only gratitude. As for David, he was arrested after authorities reopened the illegal adoption case. He admitted everything, not because he wanted forgiveness, but because the weight of his secret had finally become too heavy to carry. Justice had found him. One sunny afternoon, all four of us gathered at the bakery. Michael laughed as Ethan tried to copy one of my bread recipes. Rebecca teased him for making a mess. The bakery echoed with laughter. For the first time in over 20 years, it sounded like home. Sometimes life steals precious moments from us. Sometimes people betray the ones they claim to love. But love has a remarkable way of finding its way back. It may take years. It may leave scars. But genuine love never truly dies. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to True Life Voices, and turn on the notification bell for more emotional stories every week. And now, tell me in the comments, if you were Sarah, could you ever forgive David? Or would some betrayals be impossible to forgive?